Start here. Everybody, welcome to the Speakeasy Brewer. I'm Austin. Today is a very special day because we are here at Solstice Malt here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we're with James Weed, who is the founder and owner of Solstice Malts. So, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is it's fun to spread the word.
Yeah. Dude, this is so cool. I met James at what was it? It was the Latter Day Brewers, which is a home brewing association here in Salt Lake City. And we ended up meeting there, and I was just like, I got to come see your space. He's like, dude, come. So anyways, here we are. We're doing the thing today. And he was kind enough to take time out of his day to do a quick interview. And he's actually going to show us some of the malting process. And even we'll get our hands a little bit dirty with that a little bit as well. So anyways, super cool. So we're also enjoying some beverages while we're doing, because that's what we do here at the Speakeasy Brewer, as you know. And we've also got Taylor. Come on over here. I just want to make sure I give everybody credit. So if you guys remember this guy, Taylor, he's the man. He's now part of the Speakeasy Brewer, if anybody hasn't heard anything about that yet. So anyways, so cheers. Grab a drink if you haven't already, and we're going to get going with this. Also, today is kind of exciting because you're our very first interview for the channel.
Glad to break that cherry.
Yeah. So, anyways, so cool. So we're gonna see everything, but let's get things started with we're just gonna go down the list of questions. This is me being stupid. So, how did you get interested in the malting process? Like, how did you get interested in malting, and what led you to start your own business?
I blame my wife.
Oh.
So my background isn't in agriculture. I'm still pretty alien to the whole agriculture side. My background is in finance.
Oh.
I was a stockbroker, an investment advisor, very different world.
Yeah.
And I was working 12-hour days, and and my wife's all like, "You need a hobby." So she got me into home brewing. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to do things himself.
Yeah.
Start growing my own hops.
Yeah.
I started malting my own barley.
Oh, wow.
In like 20, 50-pound batches, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And so I went online, tried to find tips and tricks to make it better and make it easier, and there was nothing out there. It's a lost art.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to find some books from like the 1800s.
What?
I know. I lived by the U, and I even went up to Utah State. They had a few books from like way long ago.
Wow,
the malting industry has been owned by big giant companies, and they've kept everything proprietary since like the 70s.
Wow.
But I did find what we'll talk about later is the North American Craft Maltsters Guild,
right?
Where there was a bunch of companies popping up back east, and making local malt for local beer, and they are like the Brewers Association, like in the business world or in the beer world, where it's like a group of people and they help each other. It's a big, and I saw it as a business opportunity and decided to go for it.
Cool, dude. That's awesome. That's really cool. It's funny how one thing leads to another, isn't it? You start off one thing, you're like, well, found a pain point. Here we go. So speaking of the Craft Maltsters Guild, so you said you're part of it. So can you tell us how you got involved and what it means for you to be a part of it?
They've been a huge help. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Wow.
I served on the board for 3 years. I still am on their finance and member services subcommittee.
Wow.
We're still really young as a group and association, but we're growing like exponentially as like the Brewers Association did like in the early days.
Right.
That's amazing. It's funny too because we've had some of those early brewers on as like keynote speakers at the Craft Maltsters Guild, and they were like building their own equipment.
Wow.
And they were like having to do like a lot of the stuff that we're doing because nobody builds equipment our size.
Yeah.
There's a lot of correlations between the two.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad the Guild's around. We're about to have another conference in February at UC Davis.
Sweet.
And it's fun when a bunch of maltsters get together. It gets a little wild.
Yeah. If beer's involved, whether it's malting or brewing or both, that always gets wild.
This year was in Portland, Maine. Allagash hosted us.
Oh yeah.
It was a good experience.
Dude, that's so cool. So so how did you get involved with it? Like, how did you find it?
I found them in the hunt for like tips and tricks and trying to make things better.
Wow.
And I signed up like as soon as I found it because I knew they were going to be like really integral of like making this business successful.
Okay, sweet. That's awesome. And then obviously you kind of already answered this question, but does it help or hinder your position as a maltster?
It's only made connections with people like at universities,
right.
and I've only seen benefit from it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's cool. You could also go check out a lot of what about what James does here at Solstice Malt. Malt, right? Is it malt or malts?
Malt.
Malt. Solstice Malt. Go to solsticemalt.com. There's a lot of stuff there too, and some of that stuff we'll be talking about today. But it's just always good to hear it from you. So, anyways, so okay, let's talk about the malting process. I mean, obviously, you have a warehouse full of grains, and you all can see how much grain is in here. It's insane. So, tell us about the malting process from the time you get the grains to the time it's ready to start brewing.
It's a pretty decent process. It could be simple, like we go over the simple side, but there's a lot of nuances here.
Yeah, yeah.
But we get it from grains from local farmers. We do mostly barley. It's like 80% of the business. We also do wheat, rye, corn, whatever grains like the brewers want. Right. I'm able to facilitate.
Cool.
And I'm small enough I can actually do 4 tons of this, where the big maltsters won't dedicate 300 tons to like a weird grain. I even did a purple Egyptian barley once.
What?
Yeah, it's like an ancient grain, but
that's awesome.
It is cool. But I get it in from the farmer. Got a few of them around Utah, and I clean it. Runs through a grain cleaner. We'll probably see it a little bit later. Okay. And then we'll store it. And I use these super sacks. They hold about 2,000 pounds. Wow. And they're perfect for my size. But I am in the process of getting a grain bin erected. Oh. So that'll hold about 460,000 pounds. So I'll be able to take a lot. Like a whole farmer's harvest. And that'll be nice.
Wow. That's amazing.
But yeah, we deal with mass amounts of grain. Once I get it and it's cleaned, we load it into tanks, which we'll be looking at later. They're 65-barrel tanks. And we'll take it from around 10% moisture and we'll soak it up to about 44% moisture. Okay. Tricks it into thinking it's springtime and it wants to grow. From then, we'll transfer it to the floor, which I did this morning, and we'll let it germinate. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, but basically we're just letting it do its thing, becoming a plant. Yeah. And it activates enzymes, which break down the starches. The same thing that brewers are going to be doing in the mash, but we want to stop it once it reaches a certain point. And so we throw it into our malt kiln and dry it out, which stops the process. Then we'll clean it again, bag it, and then off to the brewery or distillery. Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So I guess this is just an addition to that question. So you malt or you germinate it, you dry it, you bag it. So and you said it's a malt kiln. So I guess that's where you're getting the coloring, right? Yep. So one of the kilns, was that the one that we were seeing outside that you're working on, or what was that? No, that's actually a roaster. That's a roaster. So in the world of beer, there's certain colors. Right. It could be Lovabond, SRM, or in Europe it's ESB. Oh yeah. But we can get to about 35 SRM in the kiln. Anything darker, and I have a 25-kilo drum roaster. Wow. Where I can get up to 550 SRM, like Black Malt. Wow, that's pretty cool. And then how long does that process take? I'm making crystal today, and that takes about 40 minutes. Okay. Because we're basically making a beer inside the grain. And then it turns into a sugary goo, and then we dry it out, and it crystallizes. Whoa. Okay. And then we do that for some of the darker beers that brewers like to use. Yeah. Okay, so that's why I got the name Crystal, because you're crystallizing the sugars in it. Yep. I'm learning so much right now. This is so cool. The nerd inside of me is like very excited. I haven't gotten this nerdy since I was learning to fly anyways. Cool. Okay, so it's quite the process to go from beginning to end. What's the easiest part of the process, and what's the hardest part of the process? I think loading the tanks. I use this big 8-inch auger. It does about a ton a minute. Wow. And it's been dependable, really easy. Getting the process started. Yeah. The rest of it can be pretty labor intensive. Yeah. At least the floor malting is very labor intensive. Yeah. But it's good. You burn beer calories. Yeah. You bring in beer nerds and whiskey nerds to help, and it's actually a fun time. We do a batch every week, 4 tons. Really? Dude, that's awesome. I love it. Okay, so then one question I just thought of. So you said it was a 60 or 65 barrel? 65 barrel tanks. 65 barrel. So I know what that means, but for everybody who doesn't know what it means, the measurement of barrel, what is a barrel? It's about 33.5, 31.5. Well, the tanks are about a little over 2,000 gallons.
2,000 gallons. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and you guys will have a chance to actually get a chance and look at everything. Like he said, we're right next door to the, I guess, germination room, and you'll get the chance to see the tanks, and we'll see all the cleaners. So we'll get a chance to see all that stuff here in a moment. So yeah. Anyways, okay. So what excites you about malting?
Oh, it's actually before the malting process. It's going out to the fields. Beer is agriculture, and just walking through the fields and knowing its potential.
Yeah,
it's that's what really like triggered of like I want to do this. Is taking raw grain and putting it through a process, and then I like the final product too.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But field days are always the funnest for me.
Cool. That's so cool. I would. Oh man, where about are the fields that you get the grains from?
A lot of my grain's gonna be coming out of Price, just south of Price this year. But I used other fields out in Myton, up in Logan. My wheat comes out of Nephi. My corn and oats come out of West Jordan, super local.
Wow.
And rye comes out of Collinston, Utah. It's like in between Tremont and Logan.
Okay. Dude, that's so cool. I love it because it's all local. So I'll wait and save that one a little bit later. Actually, I'll ask it now because we just talked about it. So I had a question, and I'm kind of a dingus. I'm still kind of new to the whole brewing thing, so I'm still figuring out the proper verbiage and phraseology for everything. So we talked about this a little bit in terms of once you're done with the malting process, each grain has I guess, a potential sugar capacity. So how do you figure that out?
It really does depend on the plumpness of the grain. As the grain grows, plant will put more energy or starch into it, and that'll make it plumper. Anything less than 6/64 of an inch is considered a thin or a fine. It's not good enough for brewing. It's great for feed.
Yeah.
It's not good enough for food. So that's part of the process of me cleaning it.
Right.
Separating the thins from the plumps. But it goes up to 7/64, 8/64. I've even seen some 9/64. Wow. And each year is different. Some years you get a lot of plumps. And was it 2-3 years ago? It was not a good year for barley.
Right.
I think I was getting like 22% thins.
Wow.
It was just not the best year for barley.
Crazy.
This year was good though.
Awesome.
A lot of plumps. So the more starches means more potential for more sugars in the final brew.
Cool. Okay. That's awesome. Very cool. Okay. So have you ever messed up with a batch of when you were malting?
Speaking of that purple barley, the first batch that I did, it was an ancient grain.
Yeah.
So I even malted it twice the amount of time than normal. And it still was like under modified or wasn't ready. Wow. And it actually started getting kind of slimy. It's a precursor to mold. Oh. And I finally just killed it like it wasn't good. So, and reading in those books from the 1800s, malting used to take a month.
Wow.
And we've selectively bred for malting characteristics and have brought it down to a week.
Wow.
So I was just dealing with ancient grain. I wasn't ready for it.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of cool. It would be fun to use some of the ancient grains and some of the beers, and you could be like, this beer is an ancient beer from ancient grains. So what did you figure out what caused it to mold?
I just made it a smaller batch, so it's easier to handle. I also turned it down a little bit cooler in there. Makes it a lot harder for mold to get established. And I've only had one bad batch.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. So then, obviously, that leads me to my next question: is when that happened, did you change your processes at all to prevent that from happening in the future?
I just haven't done purple barley again.
Hey, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good solution for sure. Keeps it simple. That's awesome. And then, was that when you experienced that little bit of a setback? Did it like affect you in any way where you're just like, oh my gosh, why do I even do what I do? Or was it just one of those things that's like, well, lived and learned, just move on?
It was actually recommended to me by some of the universities in the craft malters.
Really?
Like, I wouldn't malt it, but I'm like, whatever, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it because I like to experiment. And I'm like, I'm willing to take a chance.
Awesome.
But I should have heeded their advice.
Yeah, totally.
It's not the easiest to brew with.
Right.
It's because it's under modified.
Right. Interesting.
It's a more experienced level of brewing and malting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I have to just like highlight that word too. Like, I think one thing that's really awesome about you is that you want to experiment. You want to try something new. And that's one thing that I always do. It's like, you know, a lot of the stuff that I do today is an exception. A lot of the stuff that I do is all live. So when I'm brewing beer, I'm sitting there trying to like do things and make sure that my recipe is set up. And then I've definitely had a couple beers fail, but I'm always trying to tell everybody who watches, like, look, failure sometimes happens. What happens when it does come? Like, do you give up or do you just keep moving forward? And so, but I always tell everybody, make sure to, um, experiment, be adventurous. That's the rule. Because you never know what you're going to find. Sometimes something can turn into a happy accident.
Your new favorite.
I know, right?
But you're never going to win every time.
Right.
There's always going to be something.
Yep, exactly. I remember one time I had a beer fail and it was just covered with mold. And I called somebody. I said, hey, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, did you test it or taste it? I'm like, what? You want me to taste something moldy? They're like, yeah, it might be good. And they're like, or it's going to taste horrible. Just, whatever. So I went and tasted it and it tasted like burnt Band-Aid. It was disgusting.
Oh, man.
I about vomited afterwards. I'm just like, ugh. Anyways, so awesome. Cool. So you've already said this a little bit, but in terms of the farmers, so where do you source your grains from, and what happens to the grains after they've been used for brewing?
So yeah, I've kind of talked about where they're coming from.
Right.
But after they're used, it's called spent grain, and it usually goes to feed. There's a few farmers that'll pick it up. Brewers are actually pretty generous and like offer it for free.
Wow, cool.
And farmers will pick it up. It's got high in protein, still got residual sugars.
Wow.
It's actually really good feed, but it goes lactic pretty quick.
Oh.
So you want to feed it pretty quick to your animals.
Oh, interesting.
But it is like a treat for them.
Really? Interesting.
And many of farmers are using spent grain as feed for their animals.
Cool. Do they ever use it? Is it mostly feed, or do they ever use it for compost as well?
You can I compost my home brew.
Same.
And that has great potential as well. I've heard of people making like dog treats out of it.
I did that once. The dogs freaking love it.
And yeah, it's good feed.
Cool.
As long as you dry it out. But yeah, I'd have to say most of it goes towards feed.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Now, I remember one time when we first met and we started talking, there was one moment where you told me that during the malting process, or at least when you're kind of cleaning things, there's always a little bit of leftover or some excess. Is that the thinner stuff that doesn't really get through, or what is that? And what happens to that?
I actually just cleaned some of it today, but when doing 4 tons, it's about 120 million individual seeds. Wow. And that's a lot to babysit.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's some residuals stuck in a crack, or like some's left in the hopper,
right? Some's
left in another piece of equipment. That's why I really don't want to do gluten-free,
right?
Because I can never guarantee it's going to be like 100% gluten-free grains.
Yeah.
There is a malt house in Colorado that does exclusively gluten-free grains called Grouse Malt House. Shout out. And
yes.
Yeah, I could never guarantee it because there always might be something from the previous batch.
Super cool. All right, awesome, great. And then, so tell us about the partnership with the local farmers. I mean, obviously, some of these questions are a little bit, repetitive, so I apologize for that. So tell us about the partnership with local farmers, and were they already growing barley, or did you encourage them to grow barley?
They were already growing it. We're actually a great state to grow barley, but it's always been feed barley. So they have all the equipment, and it's a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Combines, grain drills, and grain bins, and you need actually a decent amount of infrastructure to grow a lot of barley. But historically, malting barley is given about double the price than feed barley.
Interesting.
So you're offering double the price. They're not too. I mean, I have run into 2 situations. Once they knew what I was going to be using it for, they declined.
Yeah.
For some reasons.
Yeah.
Most likely religious.
Yeah.
But when you offer double the price, they're really happy. And another thing that we have is those thins and rootlets that are kind of like a byproduct of the malting process. It's actually really good feed as well. So I sent that back to the farmer, and then sometimes they cut me a few cuts of meat. Like, so there's reciprocity. It's actually a really good relationship.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's. I'm glad I think I use it a lot less water than like alfalfa and corn.
Wow.
I could see only more potential for it as being more of a crop in Utah.
Oh, dude, that's so cool. That's awesome. Cool. Okay, well, a couple, I guess, right before a week ago or something like that, when we were actually scheduling the date we were going to meet up, you had mentioned something about the difference between old world malting styles and new world, or I guess commodity style malting. So, and you're doing the old style, right? Okay, so what's the difference between what's the difference between old world malting and commodity malting?
So old world malting is what they were doing hundreds of years ago. There's still a few distilleries in Scotland that are still doing the old world way, and it's usually done on the floor. It's called floor malting. It's what I do, and even before that, they were malting like in caves, where it was just constantly cool. They found like archaeological like proof of malting in caves. Wow. But yeah, it's really labor intensive, and it's a lot. I do have some technological advantages that the old world ways don't have, but commodity malting is giant facilities where they'll do more in one batch than I do all year. Wow. And it's all automated. It's all just machines. Yeah. And that's the way it's been for a while. But I'm trying to bring back premium malt.
Yeah, totally. Dude, I love that you're doing that. And then what made you, was it because of the fact that it's more premium malting or premium malt that you chose to do the old world style, or?
I knew I'd never be able to compete price wise with the big guys. I just will never get to those economies of scale. So I decided to make a better malt. And even though it is labor intensive, and even some big maltsters still have a floor malting like facilities, just because it's something that you get from flavors from that you don't get from gigantic facilities.
Right. It's like slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. It's like sometimes good things take time. It's interesting because I feel like the whole world in general right now, we're all kind of going back to like the pastoral ways, like returning back to nature. Like I want to have a garden. I want to know where my food comes from. Like I want to buy local. I want to do all these things. And it's kind of cool because here in Utah, I think a lot of people don't realize that, Utah is not necessarily the first state that pops in your mind where you're like, beer state. It's definitely not, but I think it's starting to become that. I think there's a culture of beer drinkers, brewers, home brewers, and then and then maltsters now. Like you're the first one here in Utah, right?
Since the 50s.
Wow. Since the 50s. Wow. Okay.
And I'm the only one currently.
Wow, that's awesome.
I'd like to see somebody else.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're out there and you're like, you want to do something in Utah, contact this guy.
To be in.
Yeah. You can expand it. So anyway, so that leads me to my last question. And then if there's anything that you want to add that maybe I missed, now's a good time. Otherwise, we'll go see everything else. So where do you see you and your business in the next 10 years from now? And then how do you want to improve and expand your business or product?
So 10 years has got a lot of variables and unknowns.
Right.
I'm like maxed out currently I need to expand, but I know what it's going to take to do that. And I'm going to have to be like a regional malt house. So it's going to be like a new location. I've got some equipment that could be scaled up. Right. But then you got like employees, distribution, and sales, and HR, and it's a bunch of headaches. I kind of like where I'm at right now. Cool. I just like doing this once a week, and it's fun, and it's not too crazy. Yeah. Plus, I don't know, like leveraging myself out in a possible recessionary state. Yeah. Kind of just want to stick here for a while. Yeah. But eventually, I will have to. Yeah. And there's a few different options for it. I can add on some, they're like revolving tanks instead of doing floor malting. They don't take up too much space where I can still be able to pump out some more product. So 10 years, I really don't know. Yeah. I like where I'm at now. I've streamlined a lot of this stuff. I've taken a lot of operation classes, and I really like the efficiencies that you get from certain parts. So I like kind of max that out as well. Right. Except for like I'm building a grain bin. That'll help with the supply chain side. Cool. Yeah. I have been able to increase my smoking capability. We smoke grains as well. Right. So I used to be able to do 200 pounds a day, and I could do 1,000 pounds a day now. Dang, that's good. That's awesome. So okay, so what kind of smoke malt do you make? I also cut down trees for recreation, and so I have 5 different kinds of fruit wood. I do a lot of peat. Both peat I get from Ireland and peat that I get up in the Uintas. I'm allowed to take 3 cubic feet a year, and it goes to a distillery. Wow. But I also will take requests. Oh, interesting. I've done oak. I've done mesquite. I've done hazelnut shells. Whoa. There's a little bit of oils in the shells, and it transfers over to the smoke. That's fun. So, like, if you got requests, I'm down. Yeah. If we can find the material. Heck yeah. I've heard of other maltsters doing like herbs and spices. Whoa, that would be kind of cool. But I'm down. If you guys want to try something, I'm going to try it.
Totally. So I guess that leads me to one more question, because as a home brewer, hopefully future brewmaster, I'm far away from master. I'm more like brew apprentice. Anyways, apprentice brewer. So when it comes to malting, and I guess, sorry, let me just stop for a moment, recollect my thoughts. So for a home brewer, let's say I brew my own beer and I wanted to try something or ask for a specific grain. Can I come directly to you and say, hey, James, I want to try this. What do you think? Is that something that you are willing to do for potential home brewers from Utah that might see this? Is that something that you're willing to do, or
I can give you information for you to do it yourself on a small scale.
Okay.
If you guys want to try home malting, I can give you tips and tricks on if you guys want to try something really unique. Cool. I have taken requests from brewers to do like under modified malt for like decoction mashing.
Right.
But that's really done on like a 4-ton basis.
Right. Totally.
My normal, most definitely. Because like I'm kind of maxed out. But yeah, like I'm able to take requests here and there, but home brewer scale,
probably not worth it.
It's probably better for you to try it and get the experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool, awesome. And then so most of the stuff that you do, the requests, they come from local breweries. And so, which breweries in Utah do you work with?
Most of them.
Oh, really?
I even have a little bunch of cans of all the breweries I work with.
Sweet.
And distilleries. I'm not to say most of them.
Sweet.
That's some awesome. Use me like exclusively. Some use me on the regular. Some every like seasonally, and some for like one-off or seasonal beers.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I'm excited because actually, when I won that award for that Pilsner, I got 15 pounds of your Pilsner malt. So I'm going to be using that the next batch of beer I make.
Congrats.
Thanks. It was awesome. It was really exciting. So cool. Well, is there anything that you want to share that maybe I missed or the questions didn't quite go over?
Go visit a farm. See where the real the roots of beer come from.
Yeah.
We've been separated from like our sources, and that's why I like the trend of people growing their own.
Yeah, totally.
Farmers don't get enough respect from all that they do.
Right.
I've been like opened up to like how important they are.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I think it'd be fun to how like Airbnb has an experience type thing. It'd be fun to like just come in. It's like, today we're doing this. We're going to the farm and then we're coming back. We're cleaning the grain. We're gonna get down and dirty and we're gonna malt this stuff. I think that's cool.
Good experience.
Awesome. Anything else?
No.
Cool. Well, James, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking time to talk with us today. I'm really excited to see this get out there. And I mean, we're brand new, so we're hoping that we get bigger, but you're the very first. And so we'll make sure to keep pushing that out there so people get a chance to see it, because it would be really fun to help your business grow as well. With that being said, we're going to end the interview and we're going to go take a tour of the facility. So we're going to figure out the technicalities of that and then we're going to make it happen. So cheers. Thank you. All right. So here we are. We're beginning the tour of Solstice Malt. So where are we?
This is the dock. This is where incoming grain is brought in. This is where it gets packaged before it goes back out. Lots of different kinds of stuff. A lot of things happen in and out in here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what is that? Is that flaked corn?
Flaked corn.
Wow.
We do a lot of flake grains. We do roasted. We do smoked. We do everything that basically a big malt house offers. We're able to do here. We even do milling. If a brewer doesn't have or distiller doesn't have a mill, like I do milling, and for distilleries, some mills breweries that don't have a mill.
No kidding. There's really breweries that don't have a mill? Yeah. I feel like that's like a staple thing. But
that's pretty required, but some of them don't.
Okay. Well, that's kind of cool. This is awesome. And then so here, so you get the grains here, and so this is considered the dirty grain, I guess. That's not the technical term for it, but it's like fresh. It hasn't been cleaned. Uncleaned grain. Cool. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So there's that. We're gonna go next to your roaster. That's what it was. Okay. That's what's next. Okay. So what do we have here?
We got a roaster. I got a 25-kilo roaster, which we can do chocolate malt. We can do black malt. Today I made crystal malt. It's Crystal 120. It's made for used in a lot of the stouts and porters. It gives a nice color and flavor to it. A lot of melanoidins, some caramelization.
Cool. What kind of flavor do you get from this?
It's gonna be like those dark fruits, toffees, caramels, stuff that is high temperature is required.
Awesome, cool. And then you just rolled out something also very special. So what is this?
So this is my smoker. We're able to do 200 pounds a day currently in this one, but we cold smoke it.
Cold smoke it.
And so it keeps the enzymes. So I have a separate heat unit that I put the wood or whatever combustible in there, and it wafts through and puts a medium to about a medium level smoke on it for whiskeys and for rock beers.
I didn't even know that cold smoking was a thing. My mind's blown. That's pretty cool. I love it. And it just, if you could be here right now, it just smells so good. Like you got the fresh grain on the inside, and then you come out here, and even though I'm, several feet away from the smoker, it just opens up, and I'm already craving like barbecue or something. It smells so good. So that'll be what we'll use for our next Rauch beer. I believe actually I used some of the Pilsner malt for the Rauch beer.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anyways, we like Solstice. Okay, this is my favorite part of the tour so far, next to like drinking the beers and doing the interview. But where are we now?
This is called the germination room. This is where two of the steps happen. This is where we'll soak the grains and let them germinate.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And so the grain that's on the floor right now, like how long has it been on the floor?
We did it this morning, so it's day 1.
Wow.
So on day 5, it'll go into the kiln to be dried out.
Wow.
But in the meantime, a lot's going on inside the grain.
Yeah.
But we have to have industrial cooling in here because it actually produces a little bit of heat, like us.
Right.
It also produces a little bit of CO2, like us.
Wow.
And part of that heat, we need to rake it about every 8 to 10 to 12 hours.
Wow.
The stuff on the bottom gets insulated from the stuff on the top. And the warmer it is, the faster it'll germinate.
Wow.
So we want it all to germinate at the same speed.
Wow.
We also have to break up the rootlets. The rootlets kind of want to grab onto each other.
Right.
So
interesting.
We rake it, and that's kind of a fun part.
Yeah.
It only takes like 20 minutes, but you get to make your own Zen gardens.
Yeah.
But the gardens are alive.
Yeah. Living Zen gardens. I think that'll be a new fad here before too long. That's cool. And then, so maybe we could move the camera around as well. Here, let's just see what we can see here. So you can see what we're looking at. Oh, it's not really working very well. Hold on. Okay, maybe I need to pull it out. There, let's stop. Oh, that's kind of cool, actually. I don't know. Yep. Okay, so then what is this that we're looking at?
So these are the conical tanks. You may see them at like some breweries as well.
Yeah.
But they're 1/4 inch 316L stainless. They're tanks.
Yeah.
My grandkids are going to be using these.
Yeah.
These
things are awesome.
We also pump air through it, the bottom, to oxygenate the water so it doesn't drown the grain.
Wow.
We pre-chill the water so it doesn't shock it when it's going to start the process. It's funny, when I do rye or soft wheat, I can have them loaded with grain and water, and there's this thing called packing, where like the grain expands while it's absorbing water.
Yeah.
I'm able to open these knife valves, 10-inch knife valves open, and nothing will come out.
Wow.
You have to like spray it out and get it loose
before
it comes out. It's pretty amazing.
That's crazy. And so this is the knife valve. So maybe I'll take a look at this real fast. Sorry, we're gonna just roll with it. So this is the knife valve, right? Yep. Right there. And then just so everybody can see, these are the conical fermenters. This is very amateur filming at this point. But anyways, that's cool. That's awesome. This is so cool.
Here's another tool of the trade. It's called a malt barrel.
Malt barrel. Okay, we're gonna just turn you around so you can see.
It's some still have them, but it's a stainless bin. You can roll around and transport the malt. I had to design and fabricate it so it's not too top heavy and not too bottom heavy, but it works pretty well.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
There's no grain scale, so the power goes out. It's from like the early 1900s, but it's still surprisingly accurate.
Huh. Interesting.
And I can weigh out bags with this one, but I have an electronic one that I prefer.
Yeah.
This one's just more like decor.
Right. Totally. That's awesome. So since we're here, do you want to show us what it looks like when you rake it? Okay, we'll do it real quick so you all can see what it looks like.
Some people go like this. Some people like to go like this.
Yeah.
I'm a backwards guy.
Yeah.
You see, kind of lifting up the grains, separating them out.
So it's lifting the grains and separating them out. In case you couldn't hear, I should have just given him the mic. That's awesome.
And it's not the first day, but on the third day, the roots really want to grab onto each other. So you have to do it 3 or 4 times.
Sweet. That's awesome. Cool.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for showing us that. And then last but not least is the cleaner, right?
We'll go to kiln next.
Oh, kiln. Sorry, that's what it was. I'm trying to remember all the parts and pieces. Okay, cool. So what are we looking at now?
So this is the malt kiln. It actually used to be the walk-in freezer at Lehigh High School.
What?
And I refurbished it into the malt kiln.
That's badass.
Here's kind of the color spectrum of what you get. This is where like almost all the color of the beer comes from here.
We're gonna get closer because he's gonna show us what it looks like on the inside.
This is like a Pilsner, like a Pale, and a Vienna, and a Munich. And then I get to about 35 in this kiln.
Wow.
But this is what it looks like. We just finished a batch.
Let's get a look on the inside. That's sick.
You can see it's been dried down to about 4% moisture.
Yeah.
You see some of the rootlets.
Cool.
And now it needs to be cleaned, remove the rootlets, and bagged.
That's awesome. Very cool. And so what's the malt that's in here right now?
This is a Pilsner.
That's a Pilsner malt. Okay. Awesome. So how soon until it's ready to go?
I like to give it a little bit of age, like about a week before it's ready to be milled.
Right.
It mills better. There's still some equilibrium of moisture that's happening in the center and the outside. It's good to age it just a hair.
Yeah, totally. And so is this what we're looking at? Is this going to a brewery or is it going to like some of the brew supply places? Or
some of it's already sold to breweries, but I might be getting an order from a distillery as well. Okay. I have some bakers come as well. There's this thing called this diastatic flour. Wow. You just need a little bit, but it's kind of a trick that gives pastries a little bit darker crust, a little bit sweeter dough.
Interesting. Wow, man, it's so cool because I feel like even with that, it's just diversifying. There's so much that you can do with this. It's mind blowing. This is so cool. Gosh, the nerd inside of me is like freaking out. Okay, and then the next thing is just right over here, right? We're gonna go clean it. Okay, so here we are at the cleaner. So
once it's finished, we vacuum it out and it drops into this machine. It's called a debearder. The rootlets kind of look like a beard on a grain. Huh. But your brewers don't want them. They're like 25% protein.
Oh, wow.
Which is good because for the farmers, because I send the rootlets back to the farm. They send them for feed for their animals. Once it drops out of there, it gets lifted into a bucket elevator into my cleaner. This is where it separates things that are too thin and things that are too thick. It's an old beast from 1947.
No kidding.
And it's still a champion.
1947. Do you hear that? Do you guys realize what he's saying? He's using something that's from 1947 and still working. Wow.
In fact, it's considered a premium in the agricultural world because it's like solid oak.
Yeah.
It can handle all the agitation where metal will eventually fatigue. It's just so expensive to build them out of oak that nobody really does it anymore.
Wow.
But I'm really lucky finding this guy.
How'd you find it?
It was a guy down in Richfield. He had it for like 20 years. He never used it, was planning to. He got it from the state of Nevada.
What?
They were probably the original owner right after the war. Nobody had money to get a grain cleaner, so the state bought one, and the farmers would bring it to them.
Yeah.
And this probably cleaned like all of the grain in northern Nevada for like decades after the war.
That's so cool. Dude, that's amazing. That blows my mind amongst everything else, but that like really blows my mind. For my 1947.
You want to see it run?
Hell yeah, I do. We're gonna see this thing run. Why not? Oh heck yeah! Yeah. That's amazing.
Some of the things, lines. This is what you don't want.
Yeah.
going to the brewery.
That's what's going through the. Oh, dude, that's so awesome. Look at that thing. Wow. That is.
Runs off of one motor. Whoever designed it is super smart.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Then drops into another bucket elevator to my loader.
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right, we're gonna just move. One day when we have like some sick equipment, it'll be fun to just like.
And this is an old piece of equipment as well. It's got a scale on it.
Wow.
Where it'll shut off when it gets to the right weight.
What?
And then get it to the right weight. And then this is the bane of some brewers.
Oh yeah.
This is where we sew it.
Wow.
Then off to the brewery or distillery.
Sick. That's so cool. Okay, so what type of is this? Is this also Pilsner?
This is Pilsner.
Cool. That's awesome. Do you feel like there are certain grains that you do more of?
It's like 80% barley.
Okay.
There's traits for. There's a reason barley's used.
Yeah.
Because it has the husk or the hull that helps lautering.
Right.
And the flavors, like barley is the best. Yeah. And I prefer it.
Yeah.
Malts, like it doesn't have problems like we were talking about packing. Doesn't have that. Doesn't stick together as much as like wheat.
Right.
So like I'm a big fan of barley.
Cool. And then in terms of like the different levels of malting and roasting, do you see that you do more Pilsner malt versus like certain crystal malts, or is it all kind of pretty balanced?
Most like the number one sellers are Pale and Pilsner, and then
for the base malts.
Springtime we get a little more wheat, and then fall time we have a little more dark malts.
Okay.
Vienna and Munich.
Dude.
For dark beer season.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. I need to start thinking about my next beer already. Dude, that's so cool. Okay, awesome. Well, is there anything else that we need to see or that you want to show us that is part of the process?
No, drink local.
Okay, drink local, buy local, and well, now I'm sold, and I want to do whatever I can to support you because this is way cool.
True.
So awesome, cool. Well, thank you so much, James. I really
You're
appreciate it for taking the time to show us everything. This has been just such an awesome experience, and so yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Cheers.